Craig, welcome back to Glasgow on your massive UK tour, where you're covering every part of the country. Yesterday you was at the Stand in Edinburgh. You've had past experience at the Stand in Edinburgh. It's a tough place to go to.
In fact, just give me a sec. I can still smell last night's show. Thanks, Edinburgh. Thanks for coming and just looking at me. That was awesome. Really appreciated that.
How's it going so far on the tour?
Till last night, amazing. No, it's been, it's amazing for me. I'm in Glasgow on whatever it is, a Monday night, and it's, it's not the Enormo Dome, it's not the SECC, but it's a full room, and it's my favorite room in Glasgow, the Garage. So I'm just flattered. I'm really lucky that I'm in a place where I'm not really being heavily promoted by the sort of mainstream powers that be. But people find me, and people keep in touch with me, and people keep coming to my shows very often, a multiplicity of times. So I'm just really over the moon. People in our business, in my industry, talk a lot about how the guts have fallen out of it. And, if you look on some of the comedian forums where people are trying to get shows, for example, tonight they would be, what's available to your stand-up, doing shows at different clubs around the country is just really dire. It's really tough. There's very few spots available. The ones that are have, financially really fallen through the floor. And I'm doing my own show at the Glasgow Comedy Festival in a city that my mother went to school in, and my grandmother would come in shopping from the Bridge of Weir, Kilmacombe area, and I just drove through Motherwell, where my great grandfather is from, and I'm a pretty. So
you're having some good memories driving through then?
Hey,
you're getting some good memories driving through Scotland then?
Yeah, always. Yeah, I really I carry a lot of warmth for Scotland, and it affects me in a very nice. I'm bombastic, and I can be aggressive, and I can be forthright, and Scotland I think in healthy ways, kind of, a little bit like it might seem insane to people if they ever listen or watch things that I do, but I give people more of a break because I think my grandma might be in the car ahead of me. I'm more conscious that it's not just young, fit members of the public that are clearly horrible at driving. What is wrong with you people? And I think no, this is actually a community that another great feather in Scotland's cap is it's very charity oriented, very charity minded. Something that I think the Sassenachs haven't really taken on board when you look at UK politics, that people don't there's so much disparity between, when you're watching politics through the lens of media, you just see essentially English people not liking Scots because they want to separate, and Scots not liking English because they dominate the Scottish political spectrum and have done since the Kalmar Union.
The Scots just want to go on their own.
And there's that disparity. But what I think lost in the nuances of that is that Scotland, I know from my own life, from I'm an adopted child to begin with, and as is my mother. And so I very early sort of saw, it's not like other nationalities don't adopt people, but I saw a charity in my own family and in my own real life, and in a way that I now know very much is a strong thread of Scottish people, and whether it's Protestant or Catholic, there's a strong sense of giving to others, and that doesn't mesh with the modern Tory politic of taking away the finances of disabled people and cutting into the most vulnerable of society financially, while your posh pals are paying less and less and less tax and putting more and more of the country's coffers in your own pockets. And people lose that. People lose track of that Scotland has a huge heart. The heart of Scotland is massive and beating, and it likes to be tolerant of all members of society in a way that right-wing modern politics aren't. And I think that's a lot lost in, they're all dirty socks, that nuance is missed in that, no, a lot of the reason that they're annoyed with what's going on right now is because it's not compassionate. And if that's, if you are annoyed that people want their own country and to run their own affairs because you take away the money of disabled people and the needy, well, that you can live with that in your own life, but that's that's a band-aid on what's actually happening.
I love Scotland. I mean, I've lived here for 11 years.
Accent hasn't changed the bit.
No,
well done.
I just can't
well
shift
maintained.
it. I've lived here for 11 years. Obviously, my wee boy was born here.
Yeah.
And obviously, because Scotland historically has the best UFO sighting and recording incident in history.
Is that the case? Wow.
In 1978, a chap was his car just died down. There was
of course.
It's a
the electronics failed to function.
Apparently, and something got out of this bright light and came towards him. And this has been documented. Even what's that? Area 51
yes, of course.
fake place or thing.
Roswell.
Yep, they've got the documentation of it, and the best thing about the UFO incident was the Scotsman's reply to the alien, which was, and it quotes, and it was even in the national newspaper.
Hey, you pal. Hey, you green pal.
He turned around apparently, and it went in the papers and said to the alien, "All right, come at me then, you bastard."
Right, I'll give it your best, buddy. Yeah. I hope you're not tired from your intergalactic travels, because you're about to be headbutted to death. Nice
it's just
work.
the Scottish mentality, I think, is so much better.
Just before he got anally broken. Just the second before that. And then,
it's just the mentality. It's just so much more laid back up here. Do you find that when you're doing the tours?
Yeah, I find a mix of experiences when I come to Scotland, of course. I'm disproportionately popular in Scotland, so for right away that's always a wonderful thing to experience as a comedian, and I'm always dumbfounded by it as well, because it's a small country, and I realize I have the last name Campbell, and I've spent a good chunk of time entertaining here, but I'm also flattered by the fact that that also other comedians have and don't experience the same amount of success that they do. That I'm lucky enough to hear in terms of like the seat of Campbell power is Aberdeen, and I always have to give thank you to Aberdeen, because they keep putting me in larger venues, which I don't really like. I'm kind of in a disparity in my working life right now, because I would rather, like the Garage, I'd rather play a smaller room and have it be sort of denser and more volatile, rather than, as happens in Aberdeen, they just keep putting me in successively larger venues. And thanks for this. And thank you. And it's there's an atmosphere loss in that, and I'm going up to play. They've got me in the Kings on this tour, which I think is a 1,200-seater. It may even be larger than that, but for me it's just like, Jesus. I personally, on so many levels actually, I would rather continue to play the Lemon Grove, which is I think about a 300-400-seater, and I'd rather play that like 3 or 4 times in a row, and also get to stay in Aberdeen for longer, which for that plays to my liking a lot more. Get to maybe pop over to Culloden or the various, tourist areas. And that's the other thing that I think people wouldn't realize of myself, is that I'm on holiday also. I'm a perpetually, holidaying Canadian that has Scottish roots. So I utterly don't mind being trapped here in a way that, like, if you were a fly on the wall catching the scuttlebutt of, like, English comedians, and I'm not saying every one of them, but English comedians, say, in the London circuit, for them being told that they have a show in Aberdeen, it's like they'd rather somebody kind of came out of the cushions and put a derringer behind their left ear, just that. And luckily I was shot in my brain and I didn't have to go, That's a pretty commonism. There's embellishments on all sides of that.
There's not a lot that do actually come up here now.
Yes, yeah.
They all try to stick to, like, because on your tour you've got coming up Newcastle, the Stand, Colchester, Norwich, Cambridge, Newbury, Durham, and then you're back up here to our town in Paisley on the 15th of April, which we look forward to. We've been pimping you out on the website and all that. We've seen there's not that many tickets left at the Paisley one.
Is
already.
That right?
Yeah.
Lucky. Well, that's again. That's where my, very close to where my grandma is from, and where my mum stayed when she was in school over here. And I always like to, from a Scottish point of view, again more nuanced, that it's enjoyable for me. Like, if people ask like where my family's from, I'll first say Bridge of Weir because it's the more down market area, which I've learned over the years that like people can, if I say Kilmacombe early, then people can be like, oh, it's like, so I see their reaction first to Bridge of Weir, and then I let them know it's actually Kilmacombe where she's from. Like, yeah, Bridge of Weir said, yeah, it's right up the middle, and she'd always, of course, come via Paisley to go to Glasgow on the bus, and as would my grandma, to come in, and I'm always proudly able to say Sauchie Hall, which is where they would catch the bus from to get home. So I very often, as I will tonight, I'll call my mum from Sauchie Hall Street and just let her know that I'm on that street, and she'll, of course, she'll start to tear up and know that her son is playing Glasgow, and she'll be thrilled.
You can pronounce these places better than me, and I've lived here for 11 years. I'm still awful at saying these places.
Yeah, you almost have to grow up with it. You have to put your mouth in the right position.
Get just enough phlegm in your mouth to pronounce it.
Absolutely, and of gravel. Yeah, but I also pride myself on it. So.
Your tour ends on the 18th of June at London Leicester Square.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. It's fun to play London, of course, I can't take away from that.
It's still quite a hell of a tour you got to go through, though.
Yeah, of course. But we're on the motorbike, and the weather's slightly above zero. And off to Ireland after the second show in Glasgow on Wednesday, on Thursday, and I've got a few shows out there also with Frankie Boyle at the Olympia. I'm with him on the weekend through Easter, and I've got my own little shows in Ireland just outside of Dublin dotted around it. So that's also a great pleasure for me to be able to do the Frankie shows, stay in a nice hotel, but also have my side gigs, which is
you're going to be taking a break after the tour, or have you got other things lined up already?
Yeah, I'm right now. It's fluid, but I know that it'll take place between the last show on the 18th of June and Edinburgh to go see the pyramids in Bosnia, or the believed to be pyramids in Bosnia. I'll be looking forward to making my own decision on what I see when I'm out there, but I'm looking very much forward to that, and looking at probably a 2-week trip to go via Ancona in Italy, and then pop across. We'll first come through the Mont Blanc tunnel and through France and enter Italy, and then across to the Balkans, and I think it's about 80 kilometers north of Sarajevo. There's said to be pyramids. So as curious as I am about your Scottish UFO story, I'm very curious about archaeology and antiquity, and I'm funny with UFOs as well, because there's some things that I'm very much curious, especially about our antiquity, and in the UK specifically about Skara Brae and the latest temple complex that they found on the Orkneys that they now know at the height of its deconsecration ceremony 5,000 years ago had a barbecue that involved 500 cows and one white hart stag that was found on the top of all the cow bones. So they know that there was a barbecue at a point that they think fed probably 20,000 people at once in the Orkneys. So they've now changed, some have anyway. Archaeologists have changed their focus on Stonehenge being the seat of power in ancient Britain, and the Orkneys doing so. So these kind of things that I find very interesting. But I also, there's no easier way to say it, but I'm also hyper curious about what we have in North America called the Bigfoot, or the Sasquatch, which is sometimes believed to be a lingering residue of a creature. If people are curious to look up the Gigantopithecus, which is thought to have become extinct 100,000 years ago, and it lived from about 5 million years ago. But it's just a huge orangutan, and very much looks like the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot, and has a lot of substantiating, much like the UFO sighting, stories behind it. But again, if anyone's curious about this, it's also being hijacked by the UFO movement, which is a very odd component of it to come in, because I've always been apprehensive. Although I enjoy a great UFO story, I also have sort of studied enough of the human mind and our capabilities of comprehension, specifically the sensitivity of our senses, and more specifically our eyes, that you believe half of what you see and none of what you hear, and that our brains are right now projecting as much as they're receiving, and so for me UFOs are one of those things that until we're actually like I would have loved that Scottish guy to just like rattle that alien's cage and bring him back to downtown. Look what I found, that would have been for me. That's short of that, and similarly analogous, short of doing the same thing and finding a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot and producing it for the public. We're really just into a world of folklore and interesting stories and conjecture. But what's interesting for me is why there is such a concerted effort right now to railroad that which has no nefarious direction to it one way or the other, and actually place some pretty creepy mantle upon the Sasquatch studies, including sexual assaults, I kid you not, including like kidnappings and all kinds of bizarre, like all the things associated with the UFO movement, i.e. like my previous joke about anally probed, and the some of these things, of course, are believed to have happened. That there's no reason why, if there is an alien race, why they're not coming here and studying us. That makes sense to me. But all of a sudden, like to throw in that Sasquatches are doing it too, it's like, why are you doing this? And it's a real I think we're just mincing about with topic matter. The fact is, we live in a modern age, which all of us in this room very well know, is rife with disinformation programs. So we've got things that we know are tangibly true, some of things that we're considering are like scientifically verifiable and have backup to them, and other things, and almost every other thing, is having itself bombarded with nonsensical conjectures, and these things are curious to me, Paul. These things I'm thinking like, why does somebody want something that's yet unproven, i.e. Sasquatch, whether or not a man lives in the jungle or doesn't live in the jungle? Why are we discrediting it with these very aggressive and criminal accusations that are themselves unprovable? It's very, very odd, and I I don't know how much you go down the rabbit hole, but I'm assuming, by what we're speaking of, you do.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to I try and find out what's the background of these people? Who are they? What's their,
what is their beef with the Sasquatch?
What's their beef?
Yeah.
And why are they saying that their detectives retired unblemished record 20 years on the force, when in fact they were a traffic cop that was fired early in the career and has no tenure as an investigative officer? These kind of things where you're debunking video. In fact, people, if you're curious, you can look up Sasquatch Massacre. So this is from footage from 1967, where one particular investigator is claiming that in this old footage that they can make out blood spots and pelts, where the presumption is that these unrelated, at the time, 1967 Sasquatch investigators murdered a family of Sasquatches, and now the Sasquatches are mad at us, and they're coming out of the woods to take revenge. I can't, it becomes like this ridiculous, we already know that they may or may not exist, and there's no substantiated proof to prove it either way. But why have we turned it into a B-grade horror flick out of nowhere? And then, strangely, that footage exists. This actual, it's called the Dalinden footage, which, if you're interested in looking it up, and it was from August in 1967, and it took place near the famous Peterson Sasquatch footage of Bluff Creek, California. So it was just prior to that, and the actual footage, the Dahinden footage, actually does exist. And people that I was reading on a thread who are not aggressive and not disparaging and certainly not slanderous in how they communicate online, which for me is a big indicator of the somebody's intent or the veracity of anything they say. And they were making the point that actually the original footage exists. And what's being extrapolated upon is a copy of copies from a production that toured around the U.S. in the early 70s as part of a completely separate thing. So somebody's taken actual film footage, copied it, copied it dozens of times later, and then this like very, very conscientious investigator has taken this like way down the line copy and determined through what's going on that there's been a massacre of Sasquatches, right? So these people were just really like understandably saying, if you really were an investigator and if you really cared about the outcome of what you're making accusations of, wouldn't you first of all pursue the original footage, which does exist? Wouldn't you first, like, if you were any type of investigator, you'd be like, oh, that looks like that, but it's hard, it's pixelated poorly, and it looks to me to be foggy footage. Oh, there's original footage of that? Well, I don't care. What I think is that these Sasquatches apparently were murdered, and now they're coming to get us. It's just like, wow. So for me, I've let you into a little bit of like where my brain goes when I'm not on stage, and these things are we're in a disinformation world. None of our news is telling us the truth.
They never do, but we'll start a hashtag off on Twitter. This week will be
Sasquatch.
Save the Sasquatch.
Yeah, thank
hashtag
you.
Save the Sasquatch.
Yes.
Right, okay, we're going to have to leave you to it because you're due on stage in the next 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But it's been an absolute honour and a pleasure speaking to you.
Pleasure, likewise, Paul.
Thank you very much for spending your time today.
Thank you for taking time with me.